You have not only written about Newtown, you've been up there.
I have.
Right, and talked to a lot of residents there.
Yeah.
And what's the feeling in Newtown? I mean, they must be frustrated by the lack of action on the part of Congress, but is this become a cause for them, or what do you find?
It's become a cause for some people. It's become a cause for some of the parents, certainly not all of them. The town decided in October, this past October, that it wouldn't mark the one-year anniversary of Sandy Hook with anything formal.
Mm-hmm.
They asked for privacy from the media, privacy from the public.
And they got it for the most part, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Most of the nation's media decided they were not going to send
Exactly.
their crews, which I thought was a great decision.
I did too. And 12 of the families, 12 of the 26 affected families, they went away for a ski trip that week. They all went together, so they got out of
Really?
town.
Yeah.
They sought their own kind of privacy. The town is shattered. And there's not always agreement over how best to memorialize the lives lost, what best to do now, whether after their stinging defeat in April of the Senate gun bill, whether guns and gun safety is really where they want to put their energy. There are questions about whether they could handle another loss like that.
But so some do and some don't, I guess. Is that
Very
right?
much,
Some,
yeah.
Right.
Some parents simply want to...
There was a service here in Washington, and some parents did come down for that, or some...
They did. I was there. It was in the National Cathedral. It was a beautiful vigil. And what they were trying to draw attention to really was all the people who aren't in the news who've died from gun violence. And the numbers vary, but it's tens of thousands in the past year, whether it's in a crime or self-inflicted. There are so many lives have been lost. And Newtown gets obviously so much attention because it was so horrifying.
What happened to the school?
The school has been razed, destroyed.
Really?
Yep, bulldozed to the ground. And it was part of the town's desire to move on.
Are they building another school at the site? Or?
They've moved. I don't think they plan to build anything at this site. They've transferred the kids to different other schools in the area. They're planning this long-term mental health for these communities, people to talk to. But there's a sense certainly that they want to put this behind them, and you really feel that when you go there.
Meanwhile, is there any? Did you find any connection between Newtown and what happened at
Arapahoe High School in Colorado?
High School?
No. There was, from a timing perspective,
just a coincidence. It was the same
Arapahoe
weekend?
High School. Yeah, Arapahoe High School was an 18-year-old whose mother happened to be out of town that weekend, who had harbored a grudge since September against his debate coach after he was kicked off the debate team, and who legally bought a pump-action shotgun, 12 gauge, on December 6th. And on Thursday he bought ammunition, and on Friday he went to school to kill his debate coach.
A young man like the young man up in Newtown. That's maybe the only...
I think that's one thing we need to look at really strongly, is that it appears that whether it was the Aurora shooter or the Tucson shooter or the Newtown shooter, it kills me to identify all these places, or now the Arapahoe High School shooter. All these were young men who showed signs before it happened, who showed signs before they went off the rails of needing help, of being bullied, of having mental breakdown, of having really aggressive thoughts.
And there must be, I don't want to totally blame it on the media, but which of course we can't and shouldn't, but there must be something now that they know that other young men their age have also had anger and been able to act out in this way, right? It almost legitimizes it for them. This is what you do if you're full of rage and of the age when you can buy a gun. I hate to think of it that way.
Yeah, that's a really tough way to think about it. Obviously, when these tragedies happen, we report them. One of the interesting things that happened this past weekend is that the Arapahoe sheriff said on Saturday that he's not going to mention the young man's name again. And so one of the things the media, we as reporters, have grappled with is how we ethically talk about these tragedies, how we give memory to the victims. There's a 17-year-old girl, Claire Davis, who's in a coma this morning, who was shot on Friday in the head by this disturbed young man.
And that seemed to be a totally mindless. He went looking for his debate coach. The sheriff also said, so why did he shoot her? I don't know whether he even knew her, right? He had no grudge against her.
No, and it's unclear right now whether she tried to approach him, whether she knew who he was. He was wearing a ski mask and he had a hoodie on. So, maybe she was simply in his way. He got off 5 rounds.
And the sheriff did say that he intended to kill many more people. He had enough ammunition, right?
And he had Molotov cocktails on him, and he had a bandolier covered in ammunition. I mean, this was a guy who intended this to be a mass shooting.
Police response in Arapahoe?
Very exemplary.
They said that he committed suicide so quickly before...
Because he knew that authorities were on the way. Yeah.
Because he knew the sheriff deputy was closing in on him. So they've learned from Columbine, I guess, right? One of
the great lessons in Columbine in 1999 was that when they realized there was an active shooter situation inside this high school, authorities surrounded the school, but they didn't go in it. They waited for SWAT teams to show up. They didn't know what they were facing. They'd never seen anything like this, where students would take over a school with guns. But they've acknowledged now that perhaps had they gone in more quickly, more lives would have been saved. And so they were inside the school in Arapahoe High School within 12 minutes of their first call, and all the shooter was dead within 80 seconds. Yeah.
From the time they entered?
From the time he entered.
Oh, from the time he entered.
He was in the school for 1 minute and 20 seconds. He got 5 rounds before killing himself, but he was notified by a man at the school, a school employee, that the sheriffs were on their way. And I mean, they believe that that's what prompted him to take his life when he did.
What is it about Colorado? I mean, you are from Colorado.
Yeah, I went to high school in Colorado. I lived in Colorado for 10 years. Colorado, in many ways, is the epicenter of some of the biggest gun debates we're having in the country right now over whether those who believe in gun rights can live and vote alongside those who believe in gun safety. Colorado passed far-reaching earlier this year, in the beginning of the year, far-reaching gun safety legislation. They've got universal background checks now. They've got a 15-capacity magazine limit. And the two of the state senators later this summer, the backlash was so big that 2 state senators were recalled. They lost their jobs. Third one resigned so that the Colorado Democrats didn't lose the majority in the state house. So this was, there was hundreds of thousands of dollars poured in both by the NRA and other sides.
Do Colorado's gun laws, they still are in effect?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Even
because of the recall, they're going to stay.
And then the story this weekend, another story out of Colorado this weekend, and it's a lead story at the top of your publication, Huffington Post, this morning, reported first by the New York Times. Renegade sheriffs, this is Colorado, renegade sheriffs refuse to enforce new gun laws. So they're saying, even though it's the law, we're not going to enforce the law?
Yep. That is exactly what they're saying. This is especially prevalent in the northwestern part of Colorado, where earlier this year, 11 counties held votes on whether or not to secede from the state. So you really have an incredible...
But they lost.
Yeah, well, 5 counties voted to secede. 6 voted against it. But so this is the level of emotion that you have up there. And I think the New York Times profiled a Greeley, Colorado sheriff who said, they're a little squirrely about it. They say things like, it's at the bottom of our priority list, or this sheriff held up two magazines that were neither of which were legal anymore, and he said, I got this one before the law went into effect. I maybe got this one afterwards, and but yeah, they're sending a really clear signal to citizens that the gun laws don't apply, and that's dangerous.
Now these sheriffs are elected, aren't they?
Oh yeah, yep, 27 counties. 21 of these sheriffs, I believe, earlier this summer, challenged the gun laws in court. So, to have this kind of division between those who are supposed to enforce the laws passed by the state Senate and those who are passing them, it makes Colorado an incredibly unique state right now.
A dangerous state, I would say, too.
I love my home state. Maybe I wouldn't go that far, but yeah. Complicated stuff.
When you have law enforcement officers saying we are not going to enforce the law,
there's a breakdown. There's a major breakdown.
There's a total breakdown.